They told Captain Sarah Mitchell to take off her pilot uniform because women don't belong in fighter jets. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She simply walked away from the military camp. 30 minutes later, the roar of an F-22 Raptor shook the entire base as she flew overhead at 500 feet, reminding everyone exactly who they had just dismissed. From which city around the world are you watching today? If this story moves you, please subscribe to Rising Life Stories to help us share more stories of hidden heroes. But Captain Sarah Mitchell wasn't just any pilot. She was one of only 8 women qualified to fly the F-22 Raptor, America's most advanced stealth fighter. With over 2,500 combat hours and 4 confirmed air-to-air victories, she held records that most male pilots could only dream of achieving. The officers who had dismissed her as a simple woman playing dress-up had just insulted one of the Air Force's most decorated combat pilots. What they didn't know was that Sarah had been specifically sent to their joint military exercise at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada to demonstrate the F-22's capabilities to international partners. Instead of a planned presentation, they were about to witness an impromptu demonstration of what happens when you underestimate someone based on their gender. The sonic boom that was about to rattle their windows would be the least of their embarrassment. The Nevada sun beat down mercilessly on Nellis Air Force Base as Captain Sarah Mitchell stepped off the transport aircraft. At 32, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that came from years of flying the world's most sophisticated fighter jet. Her flight suit bore the distinctive patches of the first fighter wing, and her helmet bag contained equipment worth more than most people's houses. Exercise. Red Flag was in full swing, the most realistic air combat training in the world, bringing together pilots from multiple nations to test their skills against simulated enemy forces. The temporary camp housing international observers buzzed with activity as officers from a dozen countries prepared for the day's demonstrations. Colonel James Harrison, the exercise commander, was briefing a group of visiting dignitaries when he noticed Sarah approaching the operations tent. At 55, Harrison was old-school military, a veteran of multiple combat deployments who had earned his position through decades of service. But his views on women in combat roles remained firmly rooted in the past. "Excuse me, miss," Harrison called out as Sarah approached the briefing area. "This is a restricted zone for military personnel only. The visitor center is back toward the main gate." Sarah stopped and looked at Harrison with the patient expression of someone who had encountered this situation before. "Colonel Harrison, I'm Captain Sarah Mitchell, 1st Fighter Wing. I'm here for the F-22 demonstration flights." Harrison looked her up and down with obvious skepticism. "Hey, Captain Mitchell? I was told we were getting one of our top Raptor pilots for this demonstration." "That would be me, sir," Sarah replied evenly. Major Carlos Rodriguez, Harrison's deputy, checked his tablet. "Sir, according to the manifest, Captain Mitchell is scheduled to conduct the F-22 capability demonstration for our international partners this afternoon." Harrison's expression darkened. This had to be some kind of mistake. The F-22 Raptor was the most advanced fighter jet in the American arsenal, a $150 million aircraft that required years of specialized training to master. The idea that the Air Force would send a woman to demonstrate its capabilities to foreign military leaders was beyond his comprehension. "Captain," Harrison said, his tone taking on a condescending edge, "I don't know what kind of game you're playing here, but women don't fly fighter jets, especially not the Raptor. Now, I'm going to ask you nicely to remove that flight suit and report to the appropriate personnel office to sort out whatever clerical error brought you here." The briefing area fell silent. Officers from Britain, Australia, Germany, and Japan watched the exchange with growing discomfort. Several of them had female combat pilots in their own air forces and were surprised by Harrison's outdated attitude. Lieutenant Amy Thompson, one of Harrison's junior officers, stepped forward. "Sir, perhaps we should verify Captain Mitchell's credentials before—" "Lieutenant," Harrison cut her off sharply, "when I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. Captain Mitchell, you have 60 seconds to remove that uniform before I have security escort you off this base." Sarah looked around the circle of international officers, many of whom were clearly embarrassed by their American counterparts' behavior. She had faced discrimination throughout her career, but it never stopped stinging. However, She had learned long ago that some battles were better fought through demonstration than argument. "Of course, Colonel," Sarah said quietly. "I apologize for any confusion." She began removing her flight suit, revealing civilian clothes underneath. As she folded the uniform carefully, several of the international officers exchanged concerned glances. They had been looking forward to seeing the legendary F-22 in action, and it appeared their demonstration had just been canceled due to their host's prejudices. "Major Rodriguez," Harrison said, "please escort Miss Mitchell to the gate and make sure she understands she's not welcome back without proper authorization." As Sarah walked away carrying her gear, British Group Captain William Sterling approached Harrison. "Colonel, I believe you may have made an error. Our intelligence briefing specifically mentioned that your most experienced Raptor pilot would be conducting today's demonstration." Harrison waved dismissively. "Captain, I've been flying fighter jets since before that girl was born. Trust me, there's been a mistake somewhere in the paperwork. I'll sort it out and get you a proper pilot for the demonstration." While Harrison continued his briefing, completely confident in his decision, several of the international officers began quietly investigating the situation. Group Captain Sterling pulled out his secure phone and contacted his intelligence liaison at the Pentagon. "This is Sterling at Red Flag," he said when the call connected. "I need verification on a Captain Sarah Mitchell, supposedly flying F-22 demonstrations today." "What? Are you certain?" Colonel Harrison just dismissed her as some kind of imposter. The conversation that followed left Sterling visibly shaken. He immediately sought out German Oberst Klaus Weber, who was commanding the Luftwaffe delegation. "Klaus," Sterling said quietly, "we have a problem. I just confirmed Captain Mitchell's identity with Pentagon intelligence. She's not just qualified to fly the Raptor, she's one of their top aces." Weber's eyebrows shot up. "Define top ace." 4 confirmed air-to-air kills in Syria and Afghanistan, over 2,500 combat hours. She holds the record for the longest-range Raptor engagement in combat history. And get this, she's the pilot who shot down 2 enemy aircraft in a single engagement over Damascus last year. The 2 officers looked toward the operations tent, where Harrison was still holding court, completely unaware of the magnitude of his mistake. Meanwhile, Sarah had reached the base perimeter and was speaking quietly on her secure phone. "Control, this is Viper 1. I've encountered a procedural issue with the demonstration schedule. Request permission to proceed with alternate demonstration protocol." The voice on the other end was crisp and professional. "Viper 1, you are cleared for alternate demonstration. Your aircraft is fueled and ready at Hangar 7. Flight plan has been updated accordingly." "Roger, Control. Viper 1, proceeding to aircraft." Sarah ended the call and looked back toward the camp where Colonel Harrison was undoubtedly continuing his briefing about air superiority and the importance of having the right personnel in critical positions. In 30 minutes, he would understand exactly how wrong he could be. Back in the operations tent, Harrison was in the middle of explaining to the international delegation why the F-22 demonstration would have to be postponed when Major Rodriguez approached with a concerned expression. "Sir, I've been reviewing Captain Mitchell's file, and I think there may have been a misunderstanding." Harrison didn't look up from his maps. "Major, there's no misunderstanding. Some clerk made an error and sent us an unqualified pilot. We'll get it sorted out." "Sir, according to her service record, Captain Mitchell has over 2,500 hours in the F-22. She's got 4 confirmed kills and has been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross twice." Now, Harrison looked up, his confidence wavering slightly. "That's impossible. Women aren't qualified for air-to-air combat." Lieutenant Thompson stepped forward again, this time with a tablet in her hands. "Sir, I've pulled up the official Air Force roster for F-22 pilots. Captain Sarah Mitchell is listed as one of only 8 women currently qualified on the aircraft. Her call sign is Viper 1. The international officers were now paying close attention to this conversation. Group Captain Sterling cleared his throat. "Colonel Harrison, I've just confirmed Captain Mitchell's credentials through my own intelligence channels. She is, in fact, one of your most experienced combat pilots." Harrison's face was beginning to turn red. That can't be right. There must be some mistake in the records." Oberst Weber consulted his own notes. "Colonel, My briefing materials specifically mention Viper 1 as the pilot conducting today's demonstration. I believe Captain Mitchell was using her call sign when she introduced herself. The realization of what had happened was slowly dawning on Harrison, but before he could respond, a sound began to build in the distance, the distinctive whine of an F-22's engines spooling up. 5 miles away, Captain Sarah Mitchell completed her pre-flight inspection of the F-22 Raptor with the methodical precision that had kept her alive through dozens of combat missions. The aircraft was a marvel of engineering, twin F-119 engines capable of producing 35,000 pounds of thrust each, stealth technology that made it nearly invisible to radar, and avionics systems that gave her situational awareness beyond anything previous generations of pilots could have imagined. Nellis Tower, Viper 1, requesting clearance for demonstration flight, Sarah transmitted as she settled into the cockpit. Viper 1, you are cleared for takeoff. Demonstration area is active, no restrictions. Sarah advanced the throttles and felt the familiar surge of acceleration as 70,000 pounds of thrust pushed the Raptor down the runway. At 180 knots, she pulled back on the stick and felt the aircraft leap into the Nevada sky like a rocket. Back at the operations tent, the sound of the F-22's engines was becoming impossible to ignore. Colonel Harrison looked up from his maps with growing concern. Major Rodriguez, who authorized an F-22 flight during our briefing period? Before Rodriguez could answer, the radio crackled to life. Exercise control. This is Viper 1. Beginning demonstration flight for international observers. Estimated duration, 15 minutes. Harrison grabbed the radio handset. Viper 1, this is Colonel Harrison, Exercise Commander. You are not authorized for demonstration flights. Return to base immediately. Sarah's voice came back cool and professional. Colonel Harrison, I am conducting the F-22 capability demonstration as scheduled in the original flight plan. All appropriate authorizations have been received from Air Combat Command. Harrison was about to respond when Group Captain Sterling placed a hand on his arm. Colonel, perhaps we should allow the demonstration to proceed. Our schedules are quite tight, and this may be our only opportunity to observe the Raptor's capabilities. Before Harrison could object, the sound of approaching jet engines grew louder. The international officers moved outside the tent to get a better view, and what they saw took their breath away. The F-22 appeared over the horizon like something from science fiction. Sarah brought the aircraft in low, exactly 500 feet above ground level, and the sonic pressure wave from her passage rattled every loose object in the camp. The roar of the twin engines was so intense that several officers instinctively covered their ears. But this was just the beginning. Sarah pulled the Raptor into a vertical climb that seemed to defy physics. The aircraft went from 500 feet to 15,000 feet in what appeared to be seconds, then leveled off and began a series of maneuvers that showcased every aspect of the F-22's incredible capabilities. She demonstrated the aircraft's thrust vectoring by executing a controlled flat spin, something that would be impossible in any other fighter jet. The Raptor rotated around its vertical axis while maintaining perfect altitude control, its engines directing thrust in directions that seemed to mock conventional aerodynamics. Next came a demonstration of the aircraft's stealth capabilities. Sarah flew the Raptor in a wide circle around the base while the radar operators tried to track her. For most of the circuit, their screens showed nothing. The aircraft was effectively invisible to their instruments, despite being clearly visible to the naked eye. Gentlemen, Group Captain Sterling said quietly, you're watching one of the finest demonstrations of airmanship I've ever seen. German Oberstweber nodded in agreement. The precision is remarkable. Every maneuver is textbook perfect. Colonel Harrison stood silent, his face growing redder as the implications of his earlier behavior became impossible to ignore. For her finale, Sarah brought the F-22 back toward the camp and executed a maneuver called a power loop, a vertical circle performed at maximum throttle that showcased both the aircraft's incredible thrust-to-weight ratio and the pilot's ability to handle extreme G-forces. As she completed the loop and leveled off, she transmitted a message that could be heard clearly over the camp's speakers. Exercise control. Viper 1 demonstration complete. The F-22 Raptor and its pilot are returning to base. I hope our international guests found the presentation educational. The silence that followed Sarah's demonstration was profound. Every officer in the camp stood transfixed by what they had just witnessed. Colonel Harrison was the first to break the silence, his voice carrying the weight of a man who knew his career had just taken a devastating hit. Major Rodriguez, get Captain Mitchell on the radio. Tell her to report to my office immediately upon landing. Group Captain Sterling stepped forward. Colonel, with respect, I think Captain Mitchell has already made her point quite clearly. The point, said German Oberstweber, is that expertise has nothing to do with gender. Captain Mitchell just delivered one of the finest aerial demonstrations any of us have ever seen. 20 minutes later, Sarah landed the F-22 with the same precision she had demonstrated throughout the flight. When she opened the canopy and removed her helmet, Harrison approached the aircraft. Captain Mitchell, Harrison said, his voice barely audible over the cooling engines. I owe you an apology. Sarah climbed down from the cockpit and faced Harrison directly. Colonel, no apology is necessary. You operated based on the information you had available. The information I had available included your service record and qualifications. I chose to ignore all of that based on my own prejudices. Group Captain Sterling stepped forward. Captain Mitchell, that was an extraordinary demonstration. Your skill level is remarkable. Thank you, sir. The F-22 is an exceptional aircraft. What we witnessed today was the result of exceptional training and experience. The formal debriefing took place in the main conference room at Nellis Air Force Base. Air Force General Patricia Hayes had flown in specifically to address the situation. Today's events have highlighted both the extraordinary capabilities of our aircraft and personnel, as well as areas where we need to improve our organizational culture, General Hayes began. Colonel Harrison sat at the far end of the table, his career hanging by a thread. The international incident he had created would require delicate handling at the highest levels. Group Captain Sterling addressed the room. General Hayes, speaking for the international delegation, Captain Mitchell's professionalism throughout this incident was exemplary. She turned what could have been a diplomatic embarrassment into a showcase of American military excellence. Over the following weeks, the incident became a case study in military leadership schools. Colonel Harrison was reassigned to a desk job, effectively ending his operational career. New protocols were implemented to ensure personnel assignments were based solely on qualifications. Sarah continued flying combat missions, eventually becoming the youngest squadron commander in the F-22 program. Her call sign, Viper 1, became legendary among fighter pilots worldwide. The F-22 demonstration video became one of the most watched military videos in history. For those present that day, the real lesson wasn't about aircraft capabilities. It was about the dangers of assumptions and the power of proving people wrong through excellence. 6 months later, Captain Sarah Mitchell was awarded the Air Force Commendation Medal for strengthening international military relationships during Exercise Red Flag. The real impact couldn't be measured in medals. Young women entering military aviation now had a new role model. At Rising Life Stories, we believe excellence speaks louder than prejudice. Sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't argument, but demonstrating your capabilities so clearly that doubt becomes impossible. Sarah's sonic boom that day did more than rattle windows. It shattered assumptions and opened doors for generations of female aviators. Where are you watching from today? If this story inspired you to look beyond stereotypes, please subscribe, because there are heroes whose skills transcend the limitations others try to place on them.